So Kurt and Dylan Carlson like told Courtney like this drummer Patty is the one. We'll get a hold of her. So Patty flew down to LA and did a audition at the Jabberjaw Club like during the day, and just like that was it. And it was off for the races.
Welcome to The Creative Asylum, a weekly podcast that digs deep into the minds of visionary creators of all stripes. Musicians, actors, filmmakers, writers, artists, cartoonists, and cultural disruptors. Here, we'll discuss perspectives of living life on your own terms. Life lessons that keep us grounded, insane, and sometimes pull us back from the edge. So, take a deep breath, loosen your grip on the bland and the boring. This is your weekly prescription for authentic living, creative clarity, and hopefully, a little bit of cultural rebellion.
Side effects may include spontaneous joy, existential epiphanies, and an uncontrollable urge to do weird and beautiful things.
Awesome. Welcome to The Creative Asylum, a podcast that talks with creative people about their process, their lives, their philosophies, kind of a little bit of everything from all kinds of creative people, primarily musicians, but that will change over time. I'm your host, Daniel House, former bass player and founder of the old band Skinyard. I also own the record label called CZ Records, which, believe it or not, launched the careers of Melvins, Soundgarden, The Gits, 7 Year Bitch, Built to Spill, and I've released a whole shit ton of music, from a whole bunch of other bands. Today's conversation is with my old friend Larry Schemel, who started out as a Seattle guitar player in the band Kill Sybil, but he's also played with Roky Erickson, Flesheaters, Midnight Movies, and more recently, and probably for the longest duration, the band Death Valley Girls. So we talk about his history, creativity, playing guitar, punk rock. We talk a lot about horror movies and the overlap between punk rock and metal, which is kind of a thing. Drug addiction, overcoming drug addiction, and really just that constant need to always be moving forward with some new project. So this is going to be a great conversation. I hope you stick around for the whole thing. And just so I don't forget, if you're watching this on YouTube, do us a favor, please like this video, follow us for future episodes, and there will be one every week for as long as we can keep this up. If you're listening, we're available on all platforms. Check out the liner notes because we have a Facebook page. We are on, where are we on? We're on TikTok. We're on Instagram. We hope you follow us everywhere, and we hope you enjoy this particular episode with Larry Schemel. Let's rock on, shall we? You and I met a very, very long time ago. I don't know if you remember it, but I do. At kind of the beginning of your musical career, I think. Sybil was your first band, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was the first band.
Yeah, and so that's when I first met you, was when you were in Sybil, which later turned into the band Kill Sybil.
Yes.
And I'm sure people have heard it before, but I think it's a humorous story, so I was hoping maybe you'd recount it.
Yeah, okay. So, so my band Sybil back in Seattle, we our first single came out on Empty Records.
Right.
And I remember the PR person for Empty Records was the wonderful Julianne Anderson.
Oh, yes.
And
yes.
She sent the record out, and it's like, this is like it's 90, 91.
Uh-huh.
And so it's like she sends the record out to all the fanzines and magazines to get press, and Seattle was at that time like, where things were really,
it was just exploding, right?
Yeah,
everything
it was just exploding. Yeah. And so our little single that there's like 1,000 pressed or whatever was getting reviewed in some mainstream type of magazines, and one of them was Alternative Press. It got reviewed in Maximum Rock and Roll Flipside, and then it ended up getting a good review in Alternative Press magazine. And since that was more of a high-profile magazine, it got seen by a lot of people, including the management for the soul singer named Sybil. And yeah, now that that I've been working in record stores, I do see Sybil CDs. Empty Records got a cease and desist order from the artist Sybil. Like, you can't use this name. There's already, the singer named Sybil. So we were like, oh boy, here we go. So then it was like, it's one of these, and that's, we know, like Dinosaur Jr., they had their dinosaur thing where they had to change the name because of the hippie band from San Francisco.
Equally ridiculous as far as I'm concerned, right?
Yeah. And so we were like, okay, we ran into, and back then, of course, without the Googling, with band names, it was like there was plenty of other towns with other, bands with a similar name and stuff. And there was even like an old psych band called Nirvana.
Right. Yeah, I know.
Them
I know.
Yeah. Yeah. So then we were like, well, what are we going to do? We got to change the whole name. And I think it was like an offhanded joke. One of us, I can't remember if it was me or somebody else, was like, hey, well, if we kill Sybil, we could solve that problem. And I'm like, oh, that's the name.
Hey, I think that's like classically Seattle right there. That kind of encapsulates the whole attitude of like that whole scene at that time. It's like,
it was a sort of like off the cuff, just kind of.
So you just had the one single of Sybil, and then you had another single as Kill Sybil, and then you just had one full length. Is that right?
We had one full length. Yeah, we recorded at Reciprocal, and Jack Endino had his assistant Phil Eck, who just started recording bands and stuff. And I think Kill Sybil record might have been the very first full length album. Yeah.
Well, he did a great job.
Yeah, he really did. He made us sound like a proper band because we were a bit sloppy, and we weren't too, our rehearsals were like a 12-pack of beer, and just like just that was the Seattle vibe. And but he really, and we also we went through a few drummers, like Patty, my sister, was the very first drummer. And then we went through a couple more until on the record, we had Eric Ockery.
Yeah.
Who played in
great drummer. Yeah.
Great drummer. Like, and I saw him when we were kids. He played in this hardcore band, Diddly Squat. And he was in a lot of great bands and Tree People. And so Eric was, he was like, oh, like we shared a practice space with the Tree People in Georgetown.
Okay.
And so we kind of like would play shows with them.
So was Eric playing in both bands at the same time for a while?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we even had Scott from Tree People come in, and he sang with our singer Tammy Watson on one of the songs, and we had Eric play drums. So they brought in Eric was just a killer drummer.
Yeah,
so it really, elevated the record to something that we were like, oh wow, like this is really. So with Phil Eck, and it was like kind of like it went a bit beyond our initial, just kind of like we were sort of shambolic. And
so what happened to the band that you only had the one record? Because I thought it was a great record.
Yeah, it was.
A lot of bands don't last that long, but
that's true.
Curious.
It was it was a very like we started in like 1990, and it's sort of like. Yeah, like very fast, put out the single. We went on tour, we made it all the way down to LA and played Raji's and Al's Bar, and
right.
toured with the Muffs, and everything happened. And we played a lot of great locally. We'd open for Pavement and Dictators, and played with everybody, The Fluid, and it was a very, like, everything was happening very fast. And then that time zone, the very early 90s in Seattle was, it was, like, you remember, it was really just nonstop bands and shows and stuff going on. And so the band, we did the record, and it gets dark, but we'd all were drinking and doing drugs and stuff. And at the time, in Seattle, the drug thing was really intense.
Yeah.
And I was, like, I went down that road. Okay. And so when that record was coming out, like, I I was just a screw up, and I just to be, frank, is like I got strung out, and I was just deep into that dark side of.
You were doing dope?
Yeah.
A lot of people were. A lot of people were. And we lost a lot of people as a result,
We did. I remember I remember when Andy Wood died, and that one was this huge thing. And then when it got, when it got even more personal when friends, like when Stephanie Sargent died.
Stephanie died. That was awful. I mean,
that was awful. Yeah.
I mean, Seven Year Bitch was on my label at that time.
Yeah.
But above and beyond that, like, she was my friend personally before Seven Year Bitch even existed.
Right.
And I mean, she was one of those people that was just sort of, like, she was always going to be there as part of the scene, right?
Totally.
Everybody loved Stephanie, and all of a sudden, she was just gone.
Yeah, it was so heartbreaking, and it was such a important part of
And then a year later was Mia.
Yeah, it was Mia. Yeah, and it was like another where we all knew each other. We like worked at Pikora's Pizza, would go to the Comet, would go to the shows, play together.
And the night that Mia died was basically almost exactly a year from when Stephanie died. And she came out, and because she was getting together with a bunch of her girlfriends to remember Stephanie as the 1 year anniversary. And they were across the street from the Comet, and I think it was Maria's apartment. And she's like, I'm going to go home. And everybody's like, well, you just stay here. And she goes, no, I'm good. And, the rest is that horrible history. So it's so sad. So, okay. So back to Kill Sybil or whichever one you want to refer to. There was a period of time when you and Patty did play together in the band.
Yeah.
And when she left the band, you were still. Did she leave to go join Hole, or was that
she? Yeah, she had left. She had her and her girlfriend at the time moved to San Francisco. So their plan, we're going to move to San Francisco, and she was going to continue. She played in another band called Dumbhead with Debi Shane, who was amazing, who was dating Dale from the Melvins at the time. So I think the idea was move down to San Francisco, make it easier to do the band. And it was like, her move to San Francisco was very quick because Hole at the time was looking for a drummer, and
so that was before the full length.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. And so the people like Kurt and Dylan Carlson told Courtney this drummer Patty is the one.
Yeah.
We'll get a hold of her. So Patty flew down to LA and did a audition at the Jabberjaw Club during the day, and just that was it. And it was off for the races.
Yeah.
So the Sybil and the Kill Sybil single, Patty plays on that, and then there's that Cherry Red grunge compilation that's coming out, which has the Olympia song off the first single with that lineup on.
That lineup looks really cool. I think it looks like a pretty cool record. So you've never been in a band proper with your sister again since then, correct? Or did you sort of play together in the studio with the Courtney Love record?
Yes. Yeah. Right. When me and Patty had we both moved to LA and through the 90s, and then I had to go back up to Seattle in the very late 90s to take care of my dad, who was sick and had emphysema, and then Patty was still strung out, doing really bad in LA.
So you were both doing bad, or were you doing better by then?
I was doing. I'd cleaned up by then.
Okay,
and she was still doing bad, and then she finally had that.
Were you living with her when she was still doing better? Because I know when you moved to LA, you moved together initially, right?
She had moved down initially because that's where Hole was.
Right.
And then I followed a few years later, just because I was strung out and I needed to get out of Seattle.
Yeah. I understand that.
Yeah, and I didn't know, I didn't know like what to do. And I just called Patty and said, I'm doing really bad. And she said, well, I'll send you a plane ticket.
Uh-huh.
And I remember leaving my apartment in Capitol Hill, and a friend, Lisa Orth, she picked me up and was kind enough to take me to SeaTac, dropped me off. I got on a plane and went to LA. And so we were both living there. We're both doing good. Then Patty got bad with the drugs again. And then about a couple years later, my dad got sick. I moved back up to Seattle. Patty finally had a moment of clarity and it's like, I got to get off the drugs.
I'm glad she did.
Yeah. And she went up to Seattle and we were both taking care of our dad. And while we were there, we were like, let's start recording music together again. And we did. And we started like writing songs. And then right around that moment, Courtney called Patty and said, I'm making my first solo album.
Okay.
Come back down to LA and was working on it. And Patty had, Courtney asked if she, had any music, and Patty said, well, me and Larry have been working on some music, and she let her listen to a few things, and Courtney was, she picked out a couple songs to put lyrics over, and they made it on the Courtney Love, her solo record that came out.
Is that the only solo record she's done?
Just the only solo record, yeah. And it was another wild, like Courtney wasn't in the best shape at the time, but it was wild. And Patty moved back to LA, and then I had moved back to LA, and this is like,
And was that when you joined Christy and the Flesheaters?
Yes. Yeah.
So how did that happen? Like, did you just move to LA and then the opportunity presented itself, or did he somehow find you? Or I've always been curious about that, because that's, they were such a legendary band in the day, and then they kind of did some stuff and they disappeared a couple of times. And
yeah. So the Flesheaters,
so cool.
Because they started, 77, right at the beginning of the LA, played the Mask, were part of that whole thing. And I remember, and I was a fan, like in the 80s, I remember hearing the Flesheaters. I had a compilation called American Youth Report, had a bunch of bands on it, mostly hardcore bands, and I had a Flesheaters song called Pony Dress. That song really stood out because it was just really wild sounding. And the other funny thing about that compilation is on the back there's liner notes, and they were done by Bruce Pavitt.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah.
Small world.
That was like, and it said Bruce Pavitt Sub Pop, and it was like when Bruce was doing the tapes and the Rocket column for Sub Pop. So I'd been a fan of the Flesheaters and Divine Horsemen for years. So when I moved to LA, and I immediately like started going to shows, and I was going to 12-step meetings, and and I was kind of finding a community. And within that community, I started meeting people, and a lot of it, I did like start to meet people just through friends. A friend of mine who I got a job at a screen printing shop. He was a guitar player, and he said, I'm playing in the Flesheaters. They reformed, because they had reformed a few times over the years.
Yeah.
And the last lineup was in the early 90s. So my buddy had met Chris D at a show, and they kind of hit it off, and my buddy joined him on guitar, and then asked me like, hey, Flesheaters looking for another guitar player. So I auditioned and got the gig. And it was really weird to be in LA, because I would keep meeting, Keith Morris, or I remember talking to some guy, and I was like, it was Eugene from The Decline of Western Civilization.
Yeah.
And I was like,
I love that movie. I really do.
Me too. Like, and I became friends with, so for all these LA people that I, growing up in Seattle, where LA was like this, mythical place where all the
except for everybody in Seattle was always talking shit about LA, but I think it was secretly envy.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it really was.
So what year is this you're talking? Like,
this is 90. When I first moved to LA, it was 97. The Flesheaters at that time, one of the original guys, Robin Jameson, who's passed away, great guy. He was the bass player. And then so it was me and my friend Jeff Klukowski, who's a guitar player, the young guys in the band, and then the drummer Johnny Ray, and Chris always had backup singer girls in the band who were really good. And that was a really, like just thrown into the LA scene. At the time, a lot of the old LA bands were coming back around again, like the Weirdos. And there was one particular show we played with was like a punk rock reunion show, and the Go-Go's played and Devo played and Rick L. Rick and TSOL. It was like an amazing.
That sounds fun.
Event, and just meeting John Doe and me, it's like
right.
Just really getting the whole LA, experience, punk rock experience. And so what was cool with the Flesheaters thing, we played a lot of shows, and eventually we made a record.
Yeah.
And Chris still, to this day, DIY, he had his own label called Upsetter that he started in the 70s.
Okay. That was his label. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. And he's like, because he was on SST and a few other labels, but because when he really wanted to do something, he didn't wait around. He's like, we're going to, record this record at the practice space, and he already, he had recorded like the Gun Club, Fire Love, Dream Syndicate album, worked with the Misfits, and, so he knew what he was doing. So we put out a record, which at the time vinyl wasn't happening, which was a bummer. So it came out on CD, which was great. And we continued playing lots of shows and stuff. And just this year in the Red Records, Larry Hardy.
I'm actually going to be interviewing Larry for this podcast.
Oh, that's amazing.
Not sure when, but probably in the fairly near future. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's a big supporter of Chris and the Flesheaters. So he's going to reissue that Flesheaters record. And then we have another Christie band record coming out.
So I want to ask you about that. So you recently left Death Valley Girls.
Yeah.
Which I was very surprised by.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
You're starting a new band with Christie. It's not Flesheaters, right?
No. Yeah. Chris just wanted to have it be its kind of its own thing. Chris had done, the Flesheaters, Divine Horsemen. At one point, he had a band called Stone by Stone, which put out one record on SST. So he wanted to kind of revisit that situation of just having a standalone, like this band, instead of just calling it Chris D or whatever.
And is it sounding like some of these other bands, or is it kind of its own animal?
It's Chris D and the Poison Fang Society. It's kind of splits the difference between the more punk aggression of the Flesheaters and the kind of country twang of Divine Horsemen. So it's kind of in that, it has kind of a Gun Club kind of a vibe. And we just banged it out. And like Chris had the songs, and me and the bass player Sharif, we worked out, because Chris would write the songs and just kind of have a couple chords and all the lyrics written, and we'd sort of like flesh it out and make it into real songs. So we just like went to work at a rehearsal studio and recorded the whole record at the rehearsal studio. And
that's great.
And just like completely like punk rock, like thing where it was like, let's just do this. And there was also a timeline where Chris was going to leave LA and had to get it done. And that plan actually didn't happen, but
is he living in LA, or is he living kind of like Orange County, or isn't he?
He lives in LA proper.
He does. Okay.
Yeah. So we got the record done, and then Larry in the Red is, heard it and loved it and said, I'll put it out for you guys. And then in November, we have a record release show at Zebulon coming up.
Cool. You gotta come down to San Diego?
Oh, I hope so. Yeah, that'd be cool.
You should play the Casbah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay. So back to Death Valley Girls, is the fact that you're playing in a new project with Christie and you leaving the Death Valley Girls, are those two in any way connected with each other, or did you just kind of reach a point where you're like, I'm done?
Yeah, I kind of reached a point where Death Valley Girls had been going for like
a decade, right?
Yeah, a decade, and we put out many records. That whole thing was great, and it was like many records, many tours, did a lot of amazing things, and I was really happy with the body of work and
me too.
What we did. But there came to a point after we did we did an Australian tour, and the one thing that was really tough in the band was just the security of like, financial things and the not really having a day job, and it was getting to be a bit of a struggle. And it was sort of like the other people in the band too were kind of like doing other projects, and there came a point where the singer Bonnie had one idea how she wanted to move forward with it, and the rest of us were kind of like unsure what we wanted to do. So it just became sort of a thing where it's like, like I just kind of stepped away and said, like, I just,
Was it kind of, was there tension at this point, as bands often get?
It's like, I think every band I was in, there was always points of tension, and they'd get, it would get worse and it get better and it get worse. And same thing in Death Valley Girls. It was sort of an ebb and flow of that tension.
So like the last full-length record you guys put out felt like a departure from your previous records.
Yeah.
I thought that the last record felt, maybe this is weird, but kind of felt more in the vibe of like Midnight Movies a little bit.
Yeah. It was sort of kind of in that, it was kind of in that, like more in that kind of vibe.
It wasn't as garage rocky, I guess.
Right. Yeah. It was less guitar driven, and it was a lot of keyboards and stuff.
Is that kind of more where Bonnie was wanting to go?
Yeah, and I think she really liked the idea. Like, she has a new lineup now, and it's very much vocally she has a full like backup singers and saxophone and stuff.
Wow,
so
really?
This definitely went on, just a different direction than what the rest of us wanted to do or whatever. So there was definitely like the usual band, like musical differences type of stuff.
Sure.
Happening.
Yeah.
And I just felt I needed a change and needed a break, and just like any relationship.
10 years is a long time for any band.
Yeah, it is.
And how many records you put out? Like 5 or 6?
Yeah, 5. Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah. So
I think.
I just kind of like took a break and started working at Amoeba Records, where I'd work off and on for years, and started doing just random musical projects with friends that there's a couple bands that are kind of like more like noisy and arty, we'll play random shows, and it's just a lot of fun and very free. And then Chris D called me, and, like he said, hey, if you're available, do you want to do another record? And I was ready to like kind of get back into it because taking a break from music, it's okay for a minute, but I get so like, I need to be doing something. So it was like,
you don't seem like somebody who can go for very long without having some kind of creative outlet.
Yeah.
I mean,
it was like, yeah.
What's the longest you've gone not playing music with people?
Oh man, not very long. I mean, there's been points in my life where I've had, like the dark times or been on drugs or whatever, where I've just been like, not able really to focus on anything.
Where time sort of disappears.
Exactly. Yeah. Even when there's not a band happening, I'm always trying to work on music and stay creative in some way or the other. And right now it just seems to be like there's a few things happening, and it's it's great to feel that stimulation and working with other people and being creative. It's like it's always just an ongoing thing that I never tired of.
At the core of the concept, that's sort of what this podcast is kind of about, is just people who are driven by their creative thing. It's probably going to be more music than anything just because of my background, but all sorts of different ways that people can live creative lives, and which to me is the same thing as basically living authentic lives, like being true to this thing that drives you in life.
Right. Yeah.
You seem to be one of those people that, will be in your deathbed. You can pry this guitar out of my hands when I'm dead. Right. Hopefully that won't be the case.
Yeah.
One of the things that I know that you love, and this probably also connects in a way to Christy, is movies. I know you're a big movie fan, and I am a huge movie fan as well. And Christy's a huge movie fan. So are there particular kinds of films that you are like huge fans of more than anything? Or I think you're kind of a big horror fan. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the big one, is the horror stuff. Since I was a little kid, that just hit me hard, so similar to like discovering punk rock. It's like when I discovered horror movies and this magazine, Famous Monsters of Filmland. As a kid in the 70s, I'd watch all the Universal horror, whatever was on TV.
Yeah.
So did kind of like educated myself on, just
creature features.
Yeah, all the old creature features, and then the Japanese, Godzilla movies and all that stuff. And I just would get all the books and magazines. And when I was getting a little bit older, and then in the 80s, finally, like the video explosion happened, and that's where I'm starting to able to see a lot of really rare, weird movies that I only read about.
So what are some of your favorites that are maybe not as obvious?
I mean, there's a lot of weird 70s horror films, like I Drink Your Blood and Let's Scare Jessica to Death. And
that one's kind of gnarly.
Yeah, just a lot of really weird, sleazy 70s movies. I was really drawn to, they were just really creepy and gory, and there was all the splatter movies in the early 80s, like Maniac. Like, I was really drawn to that, and I even started to write to other people. Like, there was a network of fanzines into weird movies. In New York, there was Psychotronic, Sleazoids, or Gazette, and it was funny because it was very driven by the punk rock thing, where there was a network of people into weird film and stuff who were making fanzines. And
so, what do you think the overlap is between punk rock and horror, or similarly, I suppose, also between like heavy metal and horror, because there seems to be connections in both cases.
Yeah, because I think it is. It's funny because the first time I ever saw the Misfits logo, before even hearing them, I was like, "Oh, that's the Famous Monsters magazine logo that they that they use." And the Cramps, those type of movies and the weird exploitation stuff was very taboo and not mainstream.
So is that the stuff you're more into? Is kind of the more underground, older, the more punk rock sort of?
Yeah.
So what about Giallo? Are you like really into Giallo films as well?
Yeah. I love like Dario Argento and all the Italian stuff.
All this psychedelic splatter weirdos.
Yeah. Some of them are really beautiful and really like visually stunning, and then the music,
especially all the Argento stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then you've got all the like soundtracks by bands like Goblin and stuff like that.
Yeah,
right?
Love got super into that stuff, and and it seemed to be just like another offshoot of getting into punk rock and underground stuff. Is that being into horror film also? Then it just made me want to get into like new wave cinema and art films and underground, Warhol stuff, and then in the 80s, there was the weird, like Richard Kern and, Lydia Lunch.
Right. And then that overlaps with the whole Sonic Youth world.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the whole no wave world in New York.
Yeah, exactly. And in Seattle, we had
something weird.
Something weird, which the history of that is fascinating because it does tie into Seattle punk rock, because Mike Vraney, who started, Something Weird Video. Like, I would go to the Time Traveler's shop downtown Seattle, and he would be working there.
Yes.
And I remember I'd go there, and there are books and records, and I'd buy old Monster magazines and talk to him.
God, when I first moved to Seattle, like the early 80s.
Yeah.
When I discovered Time Travelers, that was like, oh. It was, and I wasn't so much into I was into more like classic European and like 40s and 50s cinema, not necessarily as much horror, but from a place of discovery of like everything that was on the cutting edge of music, that's where I was discovering, bands like Bauhaus and Au Pairs and Pop Group and like just a lot of the weird underground stuff. I was like, and they always knew, it's like, oh, here, you should listen to this because you like that. And it was, so same thing for you with like music and also a lot of the horror. Yeah,
it was all connected. And
so tell me more about Something Weird, because I think you
Yeah,
came
yeah,
from Time Travelers?
Yeah, because Mike working there, and then I guess he was also managing Dead Kennedys.
Really? I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, he managed Dead Kennedys, TSOL, and The Accused, who I loved and who I'd see all the time. And so Mike and I think Jim Lightfoot worked there too, and they were doing the showbox and stuff. Fast forward a few years later, where there wasn't really horror movie or collector conventions back in the day. It was more like comic book sci-fi conventions. And
yeah.
so I'd go to those just if I could find horror movie collectibles. And I remember Mike would set up a table at these conventions, and he'd have videotapes of movies he, like had discovered, and some of it was bootlegs and stuff, but it was really weird, like, 60s mutt and weird, forgotten horror films and stuff. I remember buying stuff from him, and it was pretty soon after that where he started Something Weird. And then that really started to take off. And then Lisa Petrucci and him got married and became this, super team of, of folks who, and I think they befriended like Lux and Ivy, and
right.
It all kind of connects into the punk rock world. And they were able to find all these old directors and dig up prints of the films. And
I don't think I realized they had gone that deep and that far into all of that, which is so cool.
Over the years, I collect movie memorabilia and stuff, so able to find some of those old posters and press books and stuff, just because it's just the artwork is amazing. And and some of the music is really wild, and some of it's like kind of garage rock or like weird sound. And it just, it all tied into the whole like punk rock and weird,
Do you watch any current horror, like newer stuff?
Every now and then somebody will like recommend something that I'll check out, and some of it's all right. I've never been really knocked out.
I thought 2024 was like a really impressive year for like cool horror specifically.
Really? Yeah.
A bunch of my favorite movies. I watch way too many movies, like obsessively, from like the entire spectrum, but a bunch of my favorite movies from last year just happen to be horror movies.
Yeah.
Like The Substance, and which is weird, but awesome. Yeah. A lot of people didn't like the remake of Nosferatu, but I thought it was beautiful and fantastic. There's this French one called Mads, which is kind of its own weird little animal. I think you might like that one because it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Cool. And then there's this other one called Tiger Stripes, which is, I think, Indonesian. And was just kind of weird and sort of psychedelic. And I don't know. I'm finding increasingly more and more in the last several years that a lot of new horror seems to be really pushing boundaries. Like, not the mainstream stuff, but there's a lot of sort of more off to the side stuff it's too bad that like all the awards people overlook horror.
Yeah.
Because there's so much of it that's really like, you should pay attention to this, I mean, I just watched a movie called Bring Her Back by the Philippi brothers. Came out this year. Holy shit. Seriously. It's just like, it's fucked up in the very best way.
Really? Oh, that's great.
So you should check it out. I don't know. I mean, maybe not your cup of tea, but
I think I just need to be more open to seeing new film, and just takes a lot for me to
I mean, there's so much. There's just so much. Like you can pick a path and still never see it all, right?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of what's cool.
If you're enjoying this conversation, please make sure you hit that follow button so you never miss an episode. If you're watching on YouTube, please like this video, leave a comment, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. It's the quickest way to grow our channel, and it's absolutely free. You can also subscribe to our other channels on social media. Check out our Instagram at Creative Asylum CA, that's the letter CA, or on TikTok at The Creative Asylum, that's all one word. Our website is thecapod.com, and our Facebook profile is the same, facebook.com/thecapod. All right, back to the episode.
We've kind of run this whole gamut. We didn't really talk about midnight movies much, which kind of segues to talking about movies, sort of. Well, it does. It does because, I mean, movies is in the title, but you only put out a couple of records, right? A couple full lengths.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm a fan of both of them. And what I like is that I think it's a perfect name for the band's music because to me, the music is very cinematic. Like it just feels cinematic. It feels visual, and a lot of it has that kind of Stereo Lab kind of lush openness and all stuff I relate to, just both musically, but also I love music that feels cinematic.
Yeah.
And was that sort of intentional in that band?
In a way it was, because I remember when we started the band and it's just me and this other guy, Jason, and we actually, I mean, this goes back when they still had the recycler where you put ads in.
Yeah.
And we looked for a singer and we found this girl, Gina. And it was one of those things where it pretty much, like, from the get-go, it was like, there's something here. Like,
just clicked.
Yeah. Because I had a couple things I'd written musically and Gina had some lyrics and melody to them. And it was just right away. There's something here. And it was definitely like being super into bands like Galaxy 500 and Opal and Stereolab. I liked bands who had kind of the name and the artwork and the vibe were kind of all, it was all like a full package kind of a thing. And with that band, that was sort of the idea is like, and there were certain things in my mind that I didn't want to do, like, and I wanted to keep it minimal, but also big sounding, but not really aggressive or
that band is kind of texturally lush.
Yeah. And there's definitely, like the Velvet Underground and Nico influence, which was, I always wanted to have that more into some project I did. And that really happened in that band because we started out just as a 3-piece and it was a really cool combination of the three of us putting our influence into the music. And we also started playing around in LA and I think it was just at the time it was kind of unique where there weren't a lot of bands kind of doing what we were doing and started to gain attention pretty quick. It was pretty soon where we actually did, like, some of the bands we like looked up to and were inspired by, like Stereo Lab. We played with them, and
that's so cool.
The producer of Stereo Lab actually produced the first Midnight Movies record.
Really?
And the artist who did Stereo Lab, Broadcast, Primal Scream artwork, he did the artwork for the Midnight Movies record. So we got kind of sucked into that universe, and it just sort of happened. And we played shows with Broadcast and went on tour with Clinic, who we love, and Blonde Redhead. Oh, the last record, the Seattle Connection, the last record we did, Lion the Girl was the name of it. We went to Seattle and we recorded with Steve Fisk.
Yep.
And it was at the
Robert Lang? Lang. Yeah. Yep.
That studio where we got to stay and live and went down to the basement every night or every day to record. And that experience was amazing.
I just heard a wild story about that studio.
Really?
Because Robert Lang was a guy, right?
Yeah.
It was his house? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is true, but I think it probably is. It's actually the first interview I did for this podcast with my friend Scott Crane. You may know him. I don't know. It's Soundhouse Studios.
Yeah.
Anyway, he told me the story because I was asking about, like, because Soundhouse was literally designed and built from nothing, like with the concept of we're going to design and build a studio. And that had really never been done per se before. Like every other studio had been something before. But apparently Robert Lang lived in this house and he dug under the house that he was living in. He literally dug it out so that he could build the studio under his house.
Wow.
And I'm like, what? That is such a trip. Like, it seems that there must be easier ways of going about that, but
yeah,
I think that's so cool.
It is very cool.
And if it's not true, I want to believe that it is.
Yeah, because I remember going down there and there's like the walls, there's like rock and stone and, like it's a whole nother thing going on there. And it was
I think they literally carved under the pre-existing house with the goal of we're going to build this thing. So I think that's fascinating.
Crazy. Yeah.
So how come it was only 2 records? Like that was a fairly short-lived band, but it was a great band.
I think we had a good run and we were around for about 7 years, but it
was that long? I didn't realize that.
The thing was, and it was a really tumultuous time. The early 2000s, we broke up around 2007, but it was like that first, few years of the 2000s where the Strokes, White Stripes, all that stuff was kind of like going off. And all of a sudden labels had money again and we're starting to, pick up bands. And we were lucky enough to get a great record deal with Emperor Norton. That was a label in LA that Ladytron and
I'm familiar with them.
There's a Seattle connection. I think of this guy Steve Pross who worked there too. I think he was from up there.
I don't know who that was.
Anyway, the deal, the reason why the 2 records we were only able to really get those 2 records and a couple EPs done is because of Emperor Norton got bought out by Rykodisc.
Okay.
Rykodisc came in, and then we were sort of on Rykodisc for a minute, and then sort of in limbo. There was another record label called New Line Records, which
is part of New Line Cinema, right?
New Line Cinema. And
see, there's another movie connection.
Yeah, another movie connection. New Line, who I was really happy because New Line was the company who had like put out the John Waters movies and stuff. So I thought that was such a connection.
Yeah.
And then one of the A&R people for New Line was James Iha from Smashing Pumpkins. And he came to see Midnight Movies in New York and he loved it. We hit it off and he's like, I'm connected to this label New Line. And he was able to kind of make this New Line deal happen. And just through all that management and label, like stuff, it just was a lot of, it was really one of those times where not quite on a major label, but the closest I was.
But you got to experience that major label reality as opposed to being on the indie side of things.
Yeah. And there was a lot of red tape and a lot of, just a lot of stuff that when I kind of came out of that experience to kind of go back to the punk rock idea of like DIY is if you want to get stuff done, if you want to get your art out there, and if you just, unless you get to a point where you're in control of things and you have major label money and trying to exist as a band in that weird zone of like, you're kind of, you're not quite major, you're not, there's still people who want to control things and label people telling you what songs they want on the record. And it was a really like eye-opening situation.
It's unfortunate, but that trade-off seems almost universal. There's that small sliver, there's a small handful of bands that can say, you want to sign us, that's fine, but we have complete artistic control. So
exactly,
take it or leave it. And most time they'll go, no thanks.
Yeah,
there's a few bands. I think Mudhoney maybe had artistic control. I know Babes in Toyland did.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's
very.
And the thing is, invariably, they don't know better. That's the thing.
That's the thing. Yeah, when I look back at the decisions that they wanted us or things that they chose, like I look back and I'm still like, I should have just stuck to my guns and wanted that art for that song. And in the end, like the band pretty much ended kind of like Death Valley Girls, where we're all kind of like on different pages and like, I'm gonna go do this and I'm gonna go do that, and and we're still friends and everything.
That's great. And you have a couple of really great records as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a fan. So I have one last question, and it's just something that just kind of popped into my head, but I think it's worth discussing. Let's first agree on the assumption that for the most part, rock and roll is largely a patriarchal system, right?
Yeah.
It's dudes, not entirely, obviously, but it seems more often than not you have all men or all women. But most of the bands you've been in, you've played with women a lot. Sybil, Kill Sybil, Midnight Movies, Death Valley Girls. And maybe this pops into my head because, I had my record label and I put out The Gets, 7 Year Bitch, Amy Denio with the Tone Dogs, Dirt Fisherman. And people have pointed that out to me over the years. You're the label that you supported women a lot more, and you've worked with women a lot more. And I'm just wondering if that just happened organically, if it's ever something you've thought about, or if it just kind of feels more comfortable. Or
I think it's interesting because I was never like I have to be in bands with women in it, or it's never been like a premeditated thing. It just sort of happened. And when I have been in other bands, even the Flesheaters there was girl backup singers, and there's been a couple times, I was in an estrus garage rock band called The Gimmicks.
Yeah.
And that was back when that big boom in the 90s happened, and that was a dude band.
Right.
And I think that might have been one of the few only band with all guys in it. It wasn't any better or worse or anything. It was just a different thing. I think I really do like women singers. I do too. Yeah,
absolutely.
And when I think about music in my head of music I want to do, a lot of times I hear a woman singer. I hear that sort of, I like Kendra Smith and Opal. And
wow, there's a name I haven't heard or thought of for a long time.
Yeah, I love I've been revisiting some of their stuff, and just a really cool, voice, and even some of the punk rock stuff, like the Avengers. I love.
Oh God, yes! I just saw the Avengers not too long ago. Actually.
You did?
Yeah. They came to the Casbah. It was great. She's still got it,
Yeah.
So, and I wonder if maybe part of it was the fact that you have 2 older sisters, perhaps. I don't know. Maybe. Is Susan a musician or just Patty?
No, Susan never went down the music road.
She listened to a lot of music.
Yeah,
turned you on to a lot of music.
She did, yeah, because when we were kids, she was into great music, and to Bowie and the Clash and everything, and she kind of got me and Patty down that road. And Patty was the first one in the family. Our parents weren't musical. They weren't even rock and roll parents. They were great, but they mostly were into folk, and
they were music parents.
Yeah.
Like you had a household full of music that your parents were playing.
Yeah.
Not like Lawrence Welk.
Yeah. We actually had some, the first records I had as a kid that were just slanging around the house were the Beatles and the Monkees, and, and that opened the door.
I still listen to music that I grew up listening to around my parents.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it was good stuff.
Yeah, it was. And it's we were just so obsessed with, Patty was the first one to kind of be, I'm going to start to play drums. And, my dad got her a drum set, and she'd be in her room listening to, AC/DC and the Go-Go's, and just listen, playing along. And then that inspired start playing music too.
I think that's so cool. More parents should surround their kids with music.
Yeah. And it is crazy, these days where there's rock and roll school. There's stuff that there's resources for if their kid is interested in picking up an instrument. When we were kids, it was maybe there'd be lessons at the local music shop or something. But
maybe not.
Yeah.
That's okay though. That's okay. You just have to pick up your instrument, and you have to figure it out, and you have to learn it, and look where it's taken you.
Yeah.
It's it's defined your whole life.
Yeah. It's wild. It is really wild, where it's just there was, it's that thing of didn't have a plan. Yeah. It's kind of just go where your heart takes you. And, it's just looking back, I never had any, there was never I got to get to Europe, and that was never, it was always, I just want to play music. And that brought me to so many countries. It just blows my mind at all the places and people I've met through music. It's wild. And I never, had enough money, but through music, you're able to kind of make it happen.
That's the perfect place to end it right there. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Creative Asylum. A quick favor before you go. If you liked this conversation, please be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes drop every Tuesday at 10. You can find us on Instagram and on YouTube at Creative Asylum CA. That's Creative Asylum and the letters CA. Our website is thecapod.com. And our Facebook is the same, facebook.com/thecapod. Until next week, when we'll have a new conversation with another creative disruptor, stay creative in life and at work.